What happened? Welcome to Wordpath, a show about the importance of Oklahoma Indian languages and the people who are preserving and teaching them. My guest tonight is Richard Codopony. He's Comanche. He's an artist and also what I would call an independent scholar of the Comanche language. And he's language preservation officer for the Comanche tribe. Richard, to start off, could you tell us how to greet someone in Comanche?
You would say Mareawe.
Mareawe.
Comanche is more specific to that. If you're talking to two people, if you was going to say hello to two people, you'd say Mareawe. And then three people, or three or more, it would be Mareawe ka.
Mareawe ka. Huh. Okay, so it's a little bit complicated already. But just us talking to each other, we would say Mareawe.
Mareawe.
How about yourself? Also, could you, before we talk in more detail, could you just show us briefly where the Comanche language is spoken on our state map here?
Today?
Today, yes, right.
A couple hundred years ago, over here, but today it's basically in Lawton, Fort Sill area, Apache, Walters, Cache area.
Great. Okay, in the southwest.
Southwest Oklahoma.
Yeah, and the tribal headquarters is just outside of Lawton.
Yeah.
Actually, in Lawton.
Yeah.
Good.
North of Lawton.
Well, now I wanted to have you as a guest on the program because you have a very interesting personal history, I think, with regard to language. You're not a native speaker of Comanche yourself, are you?
No, no.
And yet, I think of you as, like I said, an independent scholar. You know so much because you've made it your business to go to a lot of classes and to go and learn from people.
Mm-hmm.
What classes have you taken?
Well, I've taken a lot in the area, but my interest was first sparked by my grandparents, who were native speakers, and I spent a lot of my childhood with them, and that's where the interest started. And when I was a child, they used to take me to church with them, south of Apache at the Mesquite Mission, where there were a lot of native speakers, and the majority of the congregation was Comanche. So when I went to church with them, I could hear the elders speak, and it was fascinating to me, and I asked my grandparents about a lot of the words and stuff, and I learned words from them. I wasn't really directly taught by them to speak Comanche, but that's where my interest, started as a child, and picked up words there. But my dad moved around a lot, and we moved when we was young, and I came back. We moved away for several years, and I came back, and a lot of people that went to the church were gone, as I grew up. The elders passed away, and I'd spent a lot of time as a child with my grandparents hearing Comanche, and these people were gone. They weren't around anymore. And as I grew up into a young man, I noticed this, and it worried me, and it was such a part of my childhood. Growing up listening to that, I couldn't believe that, I never thought as a child that it would pass away as a language. And as I grew up and noticed that there weren't that many speakers left, it concerned me. And when I was young, my grandma used to tell me stories and tell me words and stuff like that. And if the language died, it would devastate me. I would do everything possible that I could do as a human being to preserve this language. That's why I'm so involved with it now.
Right, I understand. A few weeks ago on our opening show, I gave a lot of estimates of the numbers of speakers of different languages in Oklahoma and estimated time to extinction in the worst of cases. For Comanche, I believe I said 160 speakers. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
As far as you know?
It sounds about right. I wish there were more.
And in a way, it's worse than that sounds because most of those speakers are elderly people nowadays. And like you say, you go away for a few years and come back, and a lot of them are gone already.
Most of them are 60 and above, and it's rare to find anybody younger than that. There are exceptions, but they're hard to find.
Right. So you've been learning from your relatives, and you also have taken some classes. I'd like to ask you about some of the different class experiences you've had. Like, was the VOTEC class the first one that you went to?
The first really organized class I went to was the VOTEC in Lawton. That was taught by Sam Davini, who's also a relative of mine. And I learned a lot of words there, and most of the classes or places I went to learn, it was just words. You didn't learn language. You just went there and I learned a lot of words, and a lot of the words that my grandparents had taught me, stuff like that.
And then I know you were in our classes when Albert and Nalkwadi and I were teaching an OU class, we had kind of an annex class down at Cameron and Lawton, and you were in that class. And you've been in some community classes, right? Walters and Indy Homa.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about those a little bit?
The class that I took at Cameron was the first class where that even approached putting sentences together and grammar and stuff like that, which was really helpful to me and helped me to understand it better. And there was classes that's going on in Indy Homa and Walters that I went to every once in a while. And because I learned so much at the class in Cameron, I always pushed them, you know, for sentences to learn more and inquired more about things.
Teachers in those classes, Indy Homa is Forrest Casnavoy?
At the time I was going there, he's gotten ill since then. I don't know if he's teaching right now. I know that other teachers have come in, but I always went there when Forrest was there and learned from him and pressed him.
And in Walters, who were you learning from?
Ray Naito. And he knows a lot. He impressed me a lot because he's more fluent. I consider him more fluent because I could ask a lot of people about words and they can give me words, but there are a few people around like him. You can ask him a word and he'll tell you the word, he'll tell you about the word, you know, he'll give you all the background information on it, and he impressed the heck out of me.
He really knows a lot.
Right.
And then didn't you take that course at the Tribal Complex, I think it was last year with Edgar?
Yeah, I took that class too, and I became friends with him, and I think a lot of that guy, and I always pressed him too. Anytime I can get a fluent elder backed up in the corner, I'll keep him there until I could
I know you will.
suck him dry, you know.
And then the next time you see me, you'll keep me backed up in the corner saying, hey, did you know this word? Did you know that word?
And I learned a lot from my grandpa, too.
And I learned a lot from you that way. So I learned from them indirectly. So when you work with your relatives, is that mainly you say you learned a lot from your grandpa?
When I was growing up, it was my grandmother and my grandpa. My grandma, she knew a lot, and I learned a lot from her, and she told me a lot of stories, and my grandfather too. And it was a bad thing that I lost her, you know, because she had so much more that she could give to me that I wasn't able to get. But I still have my grandpa. He's 96 years old, and he's actually an original Lati. And he has so much stored in his brain, you know, but the problem is he can't hear very well, and it's hard to communicate with him. So it's a struggle. I live with him right now, and he knows so much, but it's hard enough speaking to him in English. It's a shame that I can't get more out of him, but I've learned a lot of words from him that I've never heard anywhere else.
The older speakers are just such a precious resource.
I know.
It really can't be overestimated. Would you like to share with us a few of some of the things that you'll tell me about unusual words that you learned from your relatives or from other elders that a lot of Comanche speakers don't even know?
No. I've asked my grandpa some words. He's told me words about coyote that I've never heard. Anybody else words for him? I can't place them right now. Words for animals that other people don't know.
Didn't you tell? Sorry, go ahead. Well, didn't you tell me once that you had learned a name for this part of the upper
Ray told me that. God, I couldn't think of it right now.
I know there's a word for it in English too, which I can't think of right now. But that's a pretty unusual word.
I can't think of the word in English either, so
probably a lot of those
I don't feel
160
so bad.
Comanche speakers don't even know some of these words. That's the thing when you have so few speakers, and yet they each know so much. You know, I sometimes wish we could just take a tape recorder or a videotape and somehow get each person to unload their entire brain so that it would be recorded and at least preserved
plug them
in
into
that
a
way.
computer.
Right. I mean, I wish we could just somehow store what they all have in their brains because no two people know exactly the same words.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit, well, let me ask you this about, I've been asking all of my guests about any connections between language and culture. I think you had a story you were going to read. Stories and songs are part of what would be lost when languages are lost.
Yeah, well, the culture and the language are connected very closely.
Right.
I don't know exactly what you're talking about.
Didn't you have a story that you were going to read from your notebook? Would you like to read that now?
Yeah, I'll read a few lines.
I mean, yeah, just read a little bit if you want. I'd like people to get an idea of what the Comanche language sounds like, and to see that, yes, indeed, Comanche can be written and read back in its own alphabet. It has an official alphabet now adopted by the tribe.
A living proof of that. You can read things you don't know.
Right.
But I'll read a few lines. This story's called Nami Wayereki Atere. That means Quail's children. It's a funny little story. I'll go ahead and read a few lines. I want to explain the whole thing.
Right.
Teata sovesa nami wayereki patere te paati uri te kaweki kamian. Uke wakuse sik mari kwavi kaku kawos mara kapitan. Mari tabini yu sureha. Mama hina tere te ura pabise. Nananata uka nami wayereki atere te.
Read one more line. I like the next one.
Nitata tireta mesuriyekwi. I could go on and on, but I won't.
I guess we shouldn't keep this a private joke. Maybe you should explain a little bit about just briefly in English, what the story describes.
It's a story about Quail's children, and she goes away to look for food for them. Okay, wakuse. She's going away to look for some food, and while she's gone, Coyote, who's a famous character in a lot of Plains Indian tribes, the trickster, he comes up to their, where those Coyote's children are laying, comes up to their, I don't know what you call it, den or whatever, and he asks them, whose children are you? And their older brother says, Nami wuyere, we're Quail's children. And he kind of mocks them and does something that really isn't nice that I don't care to translate. But the story goes
function,
on.
Shall we say?
Yeah. Doesn't sound polite in English, but he does this, and their mother comes back and asks them what happened to them, and they tell him, and she goes off and fixes him up.
Seeks her vengeance on Coyote.
Something like that.
I think it's a wonderful story. I learned that from Lucille McClung when she was my first Comanche teacher. Speaking about the connection between culture and language, I know a big part of who you are, besides a language scholar, is that you're an artist. We have some of your art around us tonight. Do you see those things as connected in your life, your Comanche art and your Comanche language study?
Oh yeah, they're a big part. As an artist, I express how I feel, and a lot of things that churn inside of me is expressed in my artwork, and the language is a big part of that. A lot of my older work dealt with the Indian way of life, the way it used to be, not just in ancient history or antiquity, but when I was a child and a lot of the speakers were around, and I used to go to the church with my grandparents, and the women would congregate over here and talk and laugh in Comanche, and the men would be over here talking and stuff. And there was a lot of things that they did too. You know, the way they acted, mannerisms, their whole sense of humor is like completely alien from a European or American culture, Eurocentric. But the artwork that I paint about the past has to do with the past when I was a child too. The things that I used to see, feel, respect, that are passing away now because the elders are passing away, the language is passing away. But now that I've gotten involved in the language, language preservation committee, I see. Well, anyway, a lot of things that I see coming back alive. You know, like the children's school, the children language school that I've personally take a part in, and I could see the language being spoken again by small children.
I know, isn't that exciting?
Oh, that just makes me feel great. I don't want this language to die so much, you know. And a lot of my artwork lately has gotten a lot more happy because, you know, I can see the language coming alive again. And
that's great.
There's nothing more important to me that's, besides the other things I'm doing, that makes me happier than anything. And I express that in my artwork. It's become a lot more cheery.
Well, that's wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about your position on the Comanche Language Preservation Committee?
Well, I just got the position, so.
But you have been involved for some time. Maybe just tell us
I've helped them out a lot, and because I learned so much at Cameron about writing and writing down and speaking the language in the written form, which my grandparents and other elders haven't done. I've been able to help them in the community classes, all the classes that I participated in. I've been able to utilize that.
In fact, we left out one class, didn't we? Weren't you involved? Well, maybe you were more of an assistant than a student there, but the Apache class that your aunt was teaching.
Yeah.
That's one place where you used your writing skills, wasn't it?
Yeah, I used it a lot there, and I was able to help out. I do anything to help out, bring this language
So this is Rosalie
to life.
Atokny that we're talking about.
Yeah, she's my aunt.
Who's a
Yeah.
Comanche teacher and a fluent speaker.
And I go to her occasionally to learn things and stuff like that. It's, you know, anything, everything, anywhere.
Well, you mentioned the alphabet, which is one of the first things the language committee did, I know, is they pressed for having an official alphabet so that people could write things in a consistent way and kind of agree on how to write the Comanche language. I know some of our students in our Comanche classes have complained about having to learn a special alphabet, and I know it isn't an extra bit of effort at the beginning, but how difficult did you find it, and do you think it's worthwhile?
Me learning it or
Yourself,
trying to teach it? Because I've been on both sides.
Well, both. Let's hear both.
Well, I'm a college student, so I'm used to always learning new things, so it wasn't as difficult for me. When it comes to community classes where I've helped to try and teach it, most of the rejection comes from the elders who didn't learn it in that way, and they learn Comanche and then they learned English and how to speak it or write it or whatever, and they're like, well, we're too old to learn a new way, and they resist the system, and they're used to reading in English, and Comanche is written in English, but it's not pronounced the same way, so they try to read it like it was English, but it's just not pronounced that way, so they look at it, they can't understand it, and they kind of resist it.
Yeah.
The younger people are more accepting of it, but...
Although some of them are a little resistant too, just because they feel like, why do we have to, you know? I think it's important to have an alphabet that's really custom.
Well, they all come to learn the
language,
things that they don't know, and yeah, I want to learn Comanche. Yeah, I want to do that. But learning a language isn't easy, and when you start getting into grammar and things like that, it's not as easy as they thought or hoped it would be. It's a lot of work to learn that, so that's where a lot of the resistance comes from.
Yeah. It is difficult for adults to learn either a writing system or a language. They both are a piece of work, but for children it's so much easier. Children pick up language so quickly. We have a tape to show tonight of something that you mentioned briefly, which is the Comanche language preschool. There was a pilot program in June, and there'll be a longer program starting this month, I think, for 3 years. But in June there were 5 different communities that had preschools, and then there was a graduation ceremony. Let's take a look at that.
Okay.
to see all of you Numina from all 5 sites here. It really makes me feel good to see that we had this much participation in our language preservation efforts. I think we had a very good 4 weeks from all indications from the speakers. They gave nothing but positive reports from each site.
Can you say it again?
No, she don't want to say anything.
Wow, it really does do the heart good to hear those little children speaking Comanche again, doesn't it? Well, we're out of time, so I need to say thank you very much for being with us, Richard, or in Comanche, Urako.
Urako.
See you next week on Wordpath.
Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaole kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaole kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene.